Harrison Price for Tuesday, December 10th, 2024, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the historic Wall Center. In this show, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sakaris alongside Blake Price, the voice of the Spengler Cup. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson hitting switches and conducting things. I've decided I may introduce you daily with
something different each time out. Oh, okay.
About Blake Price. Right. And we got a big show coming up for you as the Vancouver Canucks face the St. Louis Blues at Rogers Arena and the return of Thatcher Demko. Finally, we will see the Canucks Vezina finalist goaltender here Tuesday, December 10th. Mark your calendars. That's
all
that speculation came to an end on Tuesday, December 10th. And we're asking on our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question, does Thatcher Demko get back to Vezina level goaltending? You can vote yes for this year, yes for next year, or no. Do so at the Sakaris and Price X and YouTube channels. And we're asking this because, needless to say, this was a significant injury and a unique injury, one we have never seen chronicled, documented with a hockey player, to the muscle in the back of the knee, the popliteus that we've all come to learn here in this province since Thatcher documented what he was going through and Kevin Woodley gave up the goods on what exactly it was. Thatcher himself has downplayed how effective he thinks he'll be in his first few games here. So I'm sort of taking my cues from him. I mean, we're already a third of the way through the season. Tonight's game 27, so the 1/3 post of this year. So I voted next year. And I think it's certainly possible for this year. But there's also the question of how much he's going to play this year. I mean, we know he's now back, so the questions become, first of all, can he sustain? Can he stay in the lineup? That was an issue the last time. And then secondly, how busy will his workload be from now till the Stanley Cup playoffs begin in April?
I mean, all the answers are arguable here on this poll question. There's no question about it. They're all arguable. I would guess from here to Christmas, in terms of usage, by the way, that he takes every third start, effectively.
So effectively, you're using him kind of like a primary backup, like a good backup.
Like a good backup, just to get him going.
But like a Corey Schneider level backup.
Right. I think what you heard playing down his play is a little bit of the mental aspect of it. When you have such a physical injury to a key part of your body, for a wide receiver, your hands. You know, a goalie, it's a knee. Hip as well, but knees and hips are it for a goalie. I think it messes with your head a little bit. It causes self-doubt. And I think that what we're seeing there from Thatcher Demko is a little bit of that when he tries to play down his performance and that I'm going to need time and all that sort of stuff. The only thing that's going to erase that for him is playing. And I think the more that he ultimately plays, and I'm thinking 5 weeks from now, I think he'll start to feel a little bit more at ease with that, and that he can. I think it's just about reps, is what I'm saying. I don't know that there's actually anything holding him back from being the goalie that he is, other than his brain and the rust of getting the reps. So I'm going to say this here. I'm going to be optimistic here until I've got evidence that it won't happen this year. I think 6-8 weeks from now. And hey, again, we've talked about the missing of training camp and preseason and how hard it is, whether you are holding up for a contract, whether you're getting cancer treatment like Dakota Joshua. We've seen this from Jeremy Swayman to Joshua and everybody in between. It matters. So there's going to be that universal struggle for Thatcher Demko. that we've seen from other players. But I think ultimately he'll get there eventually.
Yeah, I'll quibble with one thing you said. I don't know why you think all three are options. I guess if you're a Chicken Little and a doom and gloom, you can vote no. I don't know why you would vote no without any kind of evidence.
No, you're right. It would be just it's the rare injury. We don't know anything about it.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be the argument.
I would still want a little bit more evidence.
Sure.
But one thing I do know is that if you're in Patrick Alvin's chair, if you're in Jim Rutherford's chair, you do have to consider a world beyond Thatcher Demko. He has been so injury prone in his career, and if things don't go well in the rehabilitation and the performance with this injury, then you got a mighty problem on your hand. And we say it all the time. A general manager's job, hope for the best and plan for the worst. So he's going into the final year of his contract next year. You're going to get a lot of material, a lot of information, a lot of data points here on Thatcher Demko, because of course this summer, Blake, he is eligible for a contract extension on July 1st.
Yeah.
And they have taken the slow and patient route with Brock Boeser on that file, and we'll get to Boeser here a little later in the program. I suspect you would probably do the same with Thatcher Demko, given how much time he has missed. But ultimately, you've got between, you're what are we talking here? You're less than 18 months from having to decide, is Thatcher Demko our goaltender of the future? Are we going to pay him accordingly and go forth with him? And I'll say this, you and I have many a times talked about how in the Stanley Cup playoffs, it is often not the most credentialed goalie, not the goalie with the fattest resume that winds up winning. We've seen Aiden Hill and Jordan Binnington and guys who weren't exactly goaltenders that you would say are at the top of the heap of the National Hockey League become cup winners. But the flip side is, let's not forget the Andrei Vasilevskis of the world, the Sergei Bobrovskis of the world, the Marc-Andre Fleury, like guys who were considered in that tier and wound up winning Stanley Cups. For the Vancouver Canucks, as good as the Kevin Lankinen story is, as good as the Archer Shilov's story was last year in the playoffs, if you're a cup team, and we talked about this last year, Blake, when it became clear that they were going to make the playoffs, if you're ever going to win the Stanley Cup, you probably need a goaltender to steal a series, right?
Yep.
Maybe Quinn Hughes wins you one series with his brilliance. Maybe JT or Elias wins you a series, puts you over the top in a series with their brilliance. Somewhere along the line, getting through four, you probably need a goaltender to steal the series, be the MVP of a series. And I think your odds of doing that are much better with Thatcher Demko than with any other goaltender.
Matt, I'll say this, though.
Currently in the regime.
I'll say this. I think both of them can do it. I've got
You're that high on Lankinen, huh?
I think Lankinen has proved himself a lot here. And there's not a lot of, and obviously Demko, I have a higher faith in it. But there's not a lot of goaltending tandems league-wide where you'd say, I think both of those guys
are capable of stealing a series.
Shilovs, DeSmith, they've all had good performances, but neither one of those guys plays in a way that is terribly calming. I think goaltender coaches will, I'm sure, quibble that, oh, no, they're different goalie styles. I don't know. For my very uneducated eyes, I see a lot of similarities with Demko and Lankinen, and then the economy of movements and the good positioning and all that sort of stuff. Like I don't feel like when they make saves, it is luck, that it's pure athleticism. Like to me, it's goaltending. Like it is, they're thinking the position, able to pull it off. Like
master craftsmen of their trade. Yes.
Right. So in that regard, God forbid something happens to Demko, I actually do think, and again, it's lesser confidence than Demko, but if something health-wise happens for Demko, I think Lankinen can steal you a series.
You bring something up with regards to Demko, the economy of movement, the efficiency, I think is going to be even more important here.
Potentially, yeah.
As he nurses this injury along, and as you also say, I think a lot of it is mental, right?
Yes.
I think a lot of it is him having to believe he can make all these movements and still be healthy. I will quibble with you on Lankinen simply because he has never played a Stanley Cup playoff game, so he is unproven in that regard.
But the first mini test of that is, how do you do when you've been crowned the starter? Like, we often say how heavy that crown is, and he did mightily well being crowned a starter for 2 months.
For sure. It's lease month at Surrey Mitsubishi. Leasing a car, better option, lower monthly payment, flexibility to drive a new vehicle every few years, convenience of staying under warranty, fewer maintenance costs, plus you avoid the long-term commitment of ownership, the depreciation of ownership. This month at Surrey Mitsubishi, the Outlander PHEV 2024. It's what Blake and I are driving. In fact, I'm planning some drives around the holidays because I just love driving the car.
Oh, yeah.
And I know my family likes sightseeing here in British Columbia. You get it for $182 a week. If you want the gas option, the Outlander goes for $105 a week. That's the 2024 Eclipse Cross, just $100 a week. And the RVR, only $87 a week. Plus, get away with a $1,000 winter tire credit and no charge 2-year maintenance package. And then there's that $5,000 government rebate on the Outlander PHEV. Get it while it lasts. See dealer for details and terms. All leases are OAC. Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey, or online at surreymitsubishi.ca.
You know what feature I used today? It's Christmas season in the parking lot here at the Wall Center.
The steering wheel warmer.
I've
been using that the last couple of days, as a matter of fact. It's been mighty frosty in my hood.
No, it's tough parking downstairs, but the Outlander has more cameras on it than Monday Night Football, and so I was able to get into a spot that everybody else was scared of, but because I had so many cameras on this thing and a massive monitor, easy peasy.
I did the same thing. A big conference going on here at the Wall Center today.
Yeah.
I breezed by all the tough spots because I know the parking garage pretty well. I'm like, I know there will be a better spot down there. And sure enough, there wasn't. And I actually had my brother with me. He's like, what you going to do now? I'm like,
watch this.
I'm going to wedge it into one of these tiny spots. All right. Top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, and Foolish Winery. Thatcher Demko returns. He misses 26 games this year. He misses the final 12 postseason games last year, of course, after playing in the opener against the Nashville Predators, succumbing to injury. We saw Casey DeSmith for a minute, and then Archer Sheeloff. It was quite a story. So he last played April 21st, 2024. It is a period of 233 days. So 7
long time.
Months plus here for Thatcher Demko between NHL games. And let's hear from the head coach, Rick Tocchet, on the process of getting to this day, finally.
Tonight. Yeah.
What taking through the process of the last couple of games when maybe there was a decision to be made and you guys just decided to wait?
Yeah, no, just the fact of there's a bunch of factors. You want him to feel comfortable. You want him to obviously communicate with him. Lanks was playing well too, so there's a lot of there was a pressing issue to get him in, but we want to get him in. So he's comfortable enough to go in. We're excited. I mean, obviously he's a huge part of our team.
There you go. The excitement was there. It looks like, and as we suspected, the play of Kevin and Lankinen guided the hand here a little bit because they were less desperate. They didn't need to get and.
But also Lankinen had started 5 straight. Coach has been on record saying, I got to find him rest.
Yeah.
When his level dropped, it's because I overused him. So the spot was perfect with regards to Lankinen's workload as well.
Yes.
Let's hear from Connor Garland because, needless to say, the dressing room is abuzz when you get your goalie back, particularly when the goalie is of Thatcher Demko's level. Here's Garland.
Have him back, in our group and just see how hard he battled. When you talk over the summer, he's, just grinding, and he has been forever. So obviously everybody knows his capabilities. I think he's the best in the world. So just to add a player of that stature back to your lineup is huge. And obviously we're super excited to have him back. It's a pretty good tandem.
It is.
Yeah, and look. I want you to be aware that the Vancouver Canucks are minus 165 on the money line tonight via Bet365, simply because I think when you get a player of this stature back in the lineup, there is a rally effect that goes on. Now, we said that about Dakota Joshua when he returned to the lineup, and the Canucks were not exact. You'll remember that game. They were absolutely lifeless, emotionless, but maybe that further fuels an effort tonight where everybody is on point and giving their best because of who's in the cage. And because he has worked so hard in getting back, as Connor Garland noted.
Worth noting who's out the other end, by the way. Not Jordan Binnington, prospective Team Canada goalie. It'll be Joel Hofer, who actually has a better save percentage than Binnington.
He's been okay this year, Hofer.
Binnington's rocking an 897, believe it or not. Hofer at 904, but in just 8 appearances.
That somewhat affects my Bet365 line of the day.
I thought it might. And let me take the time while you ponder that to tell you that, folks, big news. If you hadn't heard this already, Yellow Dog Brewing in Penticton is open.
It has been a long road. It has been a Demko-esque road to getting Yellow Dog 2.
It is
in Penticton.
80 feet away from the fabulous neighborhood, maybe it's 120 feet away from the neighborhood brewing location there in downtown Penticton. If you're planning any ski trips or wine trips in the coming months here, do stop by neighborhood and Yellow Dog now that has it was just the park, the dog park.
It was the dog park patio, which I attended many a times, and it was great fun. And in the summer, it was fantastic, and they had a food truck there. Loved it in the summer, but let's face it, it's getting a little chilly or chillier.
Yes.
You do want to go indoors to imbibe. And the other thing I'll say is, while they are a brewery by trade, the food at Neighborhood, and you and I have had the occasion, is extraordinary. Yeah. So I anticipate the same.
Yellow Dog's going to have a different menu. I believe they're doing pizzas, certainly continue with the burgers as well. Handcrafted cocktails as well. So it's a little bit different vibe at Yellow Dog. So now there's so much to do. Your next trip to Penticton, go check it out. Open daily from 11 to 10 p.m. right now during the winter.
And they have really revitalized downtown Penticton neighborhood at the corner of Winnipeg and Westminster there. Congratulations to Mike.
Just
Mike,
amazing.
Melinda, John, Jess, and everybody.
Unofficial mayors of Penticton, really, honestly.
Yep, it is the place to go. Okay. There's a second big comeback story we're going to get to in JT Miller, but you were talking about using Demko every third game through this month or beyond?
No. Well, certainly to Christmas, where the
that's a week and a half,
where the schedule slows down. But yeah, no, I think a month. This sounds about right. 3 weeks anyhow.
Would any of that be performance based? Because like at some point, coach has to consider who gives me the best chance to win, right?
I don't think
you're not free and clear of a playoff spot like you were at this time last year. So it's still a competitive situation.
If the bottom drops out on Lankinen, you'd have to revisit it. But assuming just average Lankinen at best or at worst, then to Christmas you get him 3 starts before Christmas, and then you really have 4 starts in the holiday season, if you will, outside of Christmas. So maybe another start in there. So, by January 5th, you've got 4 starts from him.
Okay. I asked because we have people in the chat, including Jeep, who says Demko is a question mark, the injury plus no Ian Clark. I'm wondering if he can be traded and what he could net us. Lankinen has been that good. I think that is awfully hasty. First of all, you would have to re-sign Kevin Lankinen to have full assurances there. He is a UFA at the end of the year. You're re-signing him right now, you're probably paying a whole lot because he's got a very good case. I listened to John Shannon later in the program with regards to the loyalty that the team feels to JT Miller and vice versa. I'm not quite sure we are anywhere close to considering a Thatcher Demko trade, although I do think the Ian Clark not being the goaltending coach shout is an interesting one as we watch him battle back from this injury and long layoff.
Yeah, I mean, you're not trading him. I know this didn't work for the BC Lions, but they had 2 options down the stretch. The BC Lions did. And ultimately, it wasn't going to work. The whole team wasn't playing well. But I think the Canucks are in a similar spot of, we're not going to give up this great insurance policy that we have right now. Now a goaltending
Not
injury.
when you're trying to win the big prize, right? Like
right.
when you're all in, or at least when you're, as Gilman always says, when you're trying to have a baby, basically deliver a Stanley Cup, it's all hands on deck.
Like what happened with the Canucks last year is about as likely as you're far to go. Like you lose your starting keeper, yeah, you can win a series with your backup. Maybe you could win a 2 on a total Cinderella run. But if you've got a Vezina caliber goalie originally and you lose that guy, you're not winning the cup. I mean, it's just not happening.
Just think back to the summer. How many of you were ready to trade Thatcher Demko because of Sheloff's performance? Where would you be now?
Right. Which is why you're not trading Demko.
No. This offseason, that's a different matter. Again,
depending on what we see between now and then.
Between now and then, you're going to have a lot of information. He's going to be eligible for the extension. It's a totally different set of variables. Toymaker. Demko has never been Dominic Hasek levels. He's just a solid goalie, not elite. Well, solid goalie, not elite. Last year he was elite because he was one of 3 Vezina Trophy finalists. Secondly, outside of Martin Brodeur and Patrick Waugh, that's pretty much it in the Dominic Hasek company, right? Like 2 goalies in the history of the sport can maybe sit there and say, yeah, I'd put my resume beside Dominic Hasek's.
But also.
So yeah, Demko's not that guy, nor is any starter amongst the 32 right now in the NHL.
Right. So if we're talking,
Vasilevsky's going to get to the Hall of Fame, sure. Bobrovsky's coming off a 2-year run, or at least 2 playoff run, outstanding. But Dominic Hasek is in a category of his own.
If we're even grading on a curve, though, for the available goalies that we do see, I don't know what stats you're looking at. If you're just looking at traditional stats, maybe you could form those opinions. But you look at the goals saved above expected, you go deeper into the analytics of goaltending, yes, unabashedly, Thatcher Demko is an elite goaltender. He just is.
JT Miller was back on the ice this morning with his teammates, participating in the morning skate as the first part of his reintegration to the club. Ben Kuzma, the province, saying he will practice tomorrow and address the media tomorrow, probably play Thursday. Here's Rick Tocchet on having his first-line center, JT Miller, back around the group.
I don't know about Thursday. I don't know. I know he's going to practice with the full team tomorrow, so we'll get him with a line and get him cooking. So, and then we'll go from there. Same thing. I'll talk to him how he feels. But he skated. He's been skating, and like I said, he's anxious to get going, but on his terms.
And another guy who had great home ice marks last year too. He checked a lot of boxes on home ice.
Well, I probably start him. I don't know. You guys might know more than me, but 90% of the time I'd start him. And most of those starts, the puck somehow ends up in their end, and we get the forecheck going, and the guys get going. So we need more of guys to do that, to get the crowd going. Not dip your toe in the water. Like you got to dive in right from the start. And Millsy's one of those guys who dives in.
So, normally physical injury, whatever the process is, you can tell a guy's working his way and is going to be back. With JT's situation, the fact that he's back here, does that lead you to believe that he will be playing pretty soon, or is it possible this, he comes back and this doesn't work out right now and he needs more time, or how is it?
No, it's honestly, it's a communication between me and him, and you just continue that way. That's really what it comes down to.
Ben Kuzma of the Sun. Do we still say the Vancouver Sun?
The Province Post Media.
Post Media. There we go. Suggested that he is expected to practice tomorrow, as is confirmed there, and that he will likely play Thursday. He went as far as that.
Yes.
Talking walking that back a little bit.
Yeah, but I
Safeguarding himself.
Right. I think Ben's probably right here.
I don't know that he's, by all accounts, he was flying out there. As we've shown you some video already. I mean,
because of course it wasn't solely a physical matter, and it has been 2+ weeks on the physical side of things.
Yeah.
So I think it's, in some regards, a little bit easier to project, and certainly it has been with Thatcher Demko.
Mm-hmm.
So that tracks to me.
And when he comes back into the lineup, Thursday or Saturday, Boeser right alongside him?
Oh, I think so.
You go back to the duos?
I think so.
Give yourself that balance.
Why would you? I mean, I think you want to make things comfortable for him when he comes back.
Yeah, how much does it get complicated if that top line of Pettersson, Boeser, and DeBrusk light it up tonight?
It gets complicated, no doubt.
Because you're not saddling Miller. If you go Garland, Miller, and Joshua or something like that, like that's not putting luggage around JT Miller.
Florida Thursday, Boston Saturday. They have wins against both clubs from earlier this season. So
on the road, no less.
On the road, no less. And
although I don't know which is easier.
The Boston, the Boston victory did not include JT Miller as part of that 6-game road
and he
trip
talked
where
about the home
his leave.
He talked about the lack of home prowess there in the Miller answer, suggesting that he's a great tone setter at home.
He sure
and
is.
They've been missing that a little bit. So
Quinn Hughes is still wearing the big bubble after taking that high stick in the Tampa game on Sunday. But he'll play, he'll play. And Derek Forbort is coming back into the lineup for Vincent Desharnais.
He slow played that a little bit. He said he's game timing that one. So that's the way they practice.
It looks
but then
like Derek Forbort is coming. He has long been a practice how he plays coach.
That's true.
So unless something changes there, we anticipate Forbort for Desharnais. Okay, you mentioned Boeser. So we're nearly a third of the way into the season. Brock Boeser was having a superb campaign before taking that concussion versus LA on the awful hit from Tanner Jeannot. So he's played 19 of a possible 26 games. He missed 7. He'll play his 20th tonight. It's 16 points. It's 7 goals. It's 9 assists. So it's not tracking like last year's season, but of course last year he played the full campaign.
But a very near 30-goal pace.
Exactly. Yeah. But he was right on the paces of 40 goals and 70 points when he exited the lineup. He's very close to that pace.
He scores 2 tonight, though. He's right back.
Oh, yeah. Of course. He's one big game away from being back.
Yeah.
Where are you on the extension talks here? Because they slow played this. They said, we're going to take our time on this. We all applauded that. We said, good on you, Canucks, because Brock has all the leverage negotiating off a 40-goal year, his best year. You want to see whether he's a perennial 40-goal scorer, even a 30-goal scorer, as opposed to just a one-off outlier of 40 goals. But where are you on Boeser extension talks here? Are you starting to get a little itchy if you're the Canucks? If he's getting itchy, do you respond to that? And is the trade deadline effectively your deadline here, given what they did with Pettersson last year, right? Like they really wanted to know cost certainty of Pettersson going forward because it had the ability to influence their deadline plans. Take it away. All that, because there's a lot of moving parts here. Where are you on Boeser?
Well, certainly you start dipping your toe and talking to the man to his representation and seeing how close you are on the numbers. Only they will know as the trade deadline approaches what the temperature of those conversations are like. And if they feel like they're within arm's reach of a deal, even if the deal is not done, I think you comfortably go past the trade deadline and you just are real with yourself. I could be way off on this. It is purely gut instinct, but I get the feeling Brock Boeser is not going to ask for sun, moon, and stars. He'll get more than he's making, no question. But he's also, an interesting age right now. Like, what's the term that he wants here? Does he want to set himself up for one last big payday when he's 31? Or does he just want the comfort of a 7-year deal? Maybe he pushes for an 8.
Most guys want that. I know there have been a few that have bet on themselves, Austin Matthews.
But he's had enough injuries, Brock has, that he might just want the security.
I would think so.
So if that's the case, though, you're going to sacrifice cap hit a little bit there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you're the Canucks, you try to stay away from 8. You try to keep it 7. And I don't know, like, what's the number you feel comfortable at? 8.5?
Well, no, not right now on 8.5.
You don't feel comfortable with that?
If he has terrific results in the final 2/3 of this season in the playoffs, then I sort of feel the same way I felt at the beginning of the year. If I see it again, I'm willing to pay more, and good on him. And we'll be the first to say, yeah, you earned more because of the way you played.
Maybe this
the
is
one thing I'll
go ahead.
Well, his home state Minnesota Wild have Parise and Suter coming off the huge books. They actually still appear on the books for 4 more years after this one.
But at irrelevant
in their buyouts,
pittance, yeah.
But at $833,000 apiece, so it's 1.6 in dead cap for Minnesota this year. They're playing with 14.5 dead cap because of those 2 guys. So I think you have a real suitor there, no pun intended, who is suddenly going to be flush with some money, and we know how popular Brock is in his home state. So I do think you have to understand that you're going to be competing against a very motivated bidder here as we get closer to this. That if he gets to July 1st, don't be surprised if the first and only call he takes is the Minnesota Wild. And don't be surprised if the Minnesota Wild hit his targets in terms of length and compensation. Even his agents are based in Minnesota.
Although they're going to want that much money tied up in wingers.
It's a good question. It's a good question. But I would argue that Minnesota is probably still another scorer short.
Well, let's dovetail this conversation. We can come back to Boeser if you want. But coming out of the Board of Governors meeting,
with the cap going up,
with the salary cap,
right?
That informs your decision on Boeser. And you can't use this logic, 20 times on your roster, but in some sense you can. If the salary cap keeps going up, and there is now talk of like a $5.5 million bump for next year alone.
Well, 4.5, but yes.
But up over 6%. Like, they're going to negotiate to go above their threshold.
Fair. It's going to be 5%. It could be more than
they
that.
want to go up at 6%, which would mean, $5 to $5.5 million bump.
Yeah.
If that happens, again, when you go into $8.5 million per season for Brock Boeser, you've got to recalibrate what 8.5 is in the new world order.
Yep.
Or new world order.
Yep.
Like, that's effectively like a $7.5 million player has been the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So that feels about right for Brock Boeser. He's kind of a one-trick pony, but a guy that has bottom line as a one-trick pony, I don't know. The new world order 8.5, that's probably about right for that player. So you got to be careful about saying that about every free agent you've got, because that money adds up. But
I am of the view that you move and try and get a ascending asset under contract sooner rather than later. And you're right. Boeser's an interesting calculation there. Is he an ascending asset? Are you seeing the absolute best of Brock Boeser
I think
last
you are.
year?
I think you are.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's much better in this.
Yeah, which is why I would be willing to wait. And you look at the Canucks for next year and what they've got committed. They've got $23 million of defensemen committed. They have $5 million of goaltending committed. That is Demko. Mm-hmm. So you got $28 million, and then you're just shy of 42 with your forward ranks. So you're right at about $70 million committed for next year. Your key UFAs are Brock Boeser, Pius Suter, and of course Kevin Lankinen. Or if you're just willing to go with She Loves, then okay. So 2 consequential UFAs. Is Brandstrom a consequential RFA the way he's going? Maybe. But him and Ratu as RFAs who aren't going to cost you a ton. So, let's say you want to bring Suter back. Let's say you want to bring Brandstrom and Ratu back. Let's say all told you're in for about $5 to $6 million on that. Then you've got some pretty good money to play with. But are you investing on the wing? Or are you investing in a top 4 defenseman? And of course, all this will change with the trades they make, right? Or we suspect it will things will change with trades that they make, and maybe the way the rest of the season goes, if any players are moved out or anything like that. You know, if Höglander is moved out, obviously you have more cap space for next year.
And as Steve points out in the chat, an extra 2.3 in OEL buyout gets tacked on, over the next couple of years going forward. So you got to accommodate for that.
Sorry, I did not do the dead cap money, but yes, OEL. You've got OEL and McKayev next year at about $5.5 million. So yeah, you're about 75 million already committed for next year. So you know what? It's about 17 million if the cap goes up only the 5%. With the 2 significant UFAs, the 2 could be significant RFAs, you're going to need a backup goaltender, whether it's Lankin and Sheloves or somebody else.
But I get the feeling
it's doable.
The other thing to come out of the Board of Governors meetings is just overall CBA negotiations. Mm-hmm. And I think that both sides want to make this world sound like it's a lot rosier than it is.
Yep.
And I think the players are going to say, hey, we better grab if they want to inflate the cap a little bit more so that we make more money this year, let them do it. If that's what the owners, and it sounds like the owners want to do it, the players are going to say yes. I mean, the Canucks could get a little bit of a get-out-of-jail-free card here if this gets a real big bump for next season.
Yeah, and so to answer the question, I'm still willing to wait, because the other thing that I think you need to sort out if you're the Canucks this year, are you comfortable just adding 1 top 4 defenseman, or do you need 2? And if it is 2, then are you better off spending your money on defense next offseason than investing top dollar in Boeser?
Well, again, if Lekramaki just comes in and assumes the Brock Boeser position, do you redeploy the asset?
Yeah, so a lot of moving parts. But yeah, I suspect you'll hear more about Brock Boeser, his extension, what the Canucks are going to do there after Christmas in the second half.
And the team success is an informed piece on this. Where are the Canucks?
Of course it is.
At this point.
Of course it is.
Because if they fall down to a bubble team, even if they're just comfortably into the playoffs, but more likely a 3rd seed or a wild card spot,
team success, Brock's health, there's a lot of
it gets tricky.
A lot of moving parts. But yeah, I think you've crossed the first threshold here, and that you've seen Brock Boeser come back after his career year and have a very good start to this season, fueling the opinion that it is sustainable, what we saw last year. Let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by Greta. Greta, a fantastic spot to catch all the games, home and away. We'll be there for Canucks Army viewing parties later in the season. You were just steps from the arena stadium. Check out the great street food menu. The Big Mac poutine is quite decadent, and the arcade. All your old favorites and new ones, plus the coolest air hockey table you've ever seen. Weekly drink specials. Greta, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Greta Bar, let the games begin. We'll talk to John Shannon here. He's launching his a new podcast with Darren Millard. He had a chance to catch up with Jim Rutherford last week at the USA Hockey Hall of Fame. And some good comments here from John on Thatcher Demko, on this particular group of Canucks, and I think that was very informed by Jim Rutherford, and on the JT Miller side of things. Then Cam Robinson's going to join us. So we talk Hughes for Hart, we talk Demko, Lekramaki, Kudratsev, and EPD. We asked them, could they be solutions for this year? Plus, Cam is really shaking the world junior hockey world these days with some of his reporting on a couple of standout CHL players who are considering, understand at the very least,
kicking around,
that there is a fair bit of money available to them if they jump to the NCAA, which is now allowed by the NCAA. So a good conversation with Cam as well.
With zero development downside, by the way. If guys
oh, that's why I said when the NCAA said we're going to take the CHL kids now, I went, whoa, this is going to be, and I saw the OHL is aggressively expanding, and I was like, guys, there's going to be significant money available for these kids in the NCAAs. You can't give them significant money, or at least you can't in the model right now.
And they get to play against 22-year-olds and take the next step in their development for a year or two.
Yeah. So they're playing fewer games. I'm not sure that's going to matter in the face of, I'll give you $1 million to come play for BU or BC.
Yeah.
So much is left to be sorted there, and we'll talk to Cam on Tuesdays and Jeff Merrick on Fridays as we go forward on that. But yeah, junior hockey in Canada has got to be terrified of all this. So that's coming up on the show. Let's get to our Bet365 bets of the day. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. You got a win yesterday.
I did. Joe Burrow, 3 touchdown passes. I needed all the minutes of the game to make it happen, but got it.
I was debating yesterday between which upset I liked more, Anaheim in Montreal or the Rangers to lose again. And I thought to myself, you know what? Things got so bad there with the Rangers. They'll put their foot down and take care of the Blackhawks. They're just so terrible. And the Blackhawks went in there and got a 2-1 win at the Garden. So I got it wrong. The honor passes to you. What do you like?
I'm looking at Thatcher Demko.
Oh, wow.
And this is not an expectation based on his, there still might be 4 goals to get behind him. But we know that the Canucks do surrender shots. And at home, it's been an issue with teams piling up shots. 30 saves for Thatcher Demko. It's a pretty good number. Plus 195. I had to jump on it.
I was looking at some Canucks props. I stumbled across Connor Garland. You may remember the pandemic year where everybody just played in their division. Connor Garland was a member of the Arizona Coyotes at the time, and they played the St. Louis Blues and Jordan Binnington a lot. So Connor Garland, in his career as a Coyote, actually played 12 games against St. Louis and had 5 goals and 10 points. Ironically, since joining the Vancouver Canucks, he's played the Blues 8 times, just the 1 goal, 1 assist. And I'm thinking to myself, it's got to correct. Then you told me Binnington isn't starting. Nevertheless, Garland as an anytime goal scorer tonight is plus 200. And I'm going to stick with that, even against Hofer.
He's due. Garland is due.
One would think,
Yeah.
right? You know, he's better than 2 points in 8 games against any given opponent. I realized at one point the Blues were a pretty stout defensive team. They're as Jeff said yesterday, the definition of mediocrity in the NHL. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. John Shannon coming up next.
I'll be honest, I don't get to many games anymore, whether it be at the arena or the stadium. Ticket availability cost, it's a bit of an issue these days. So I prefer to go where there's atmosphere and I know I can get in. Greta Bar YVR. Soak up all the atmosphere with your fellow fans and enjoy a great night with a great street food menu. I prefer the poutine. Weekly drink specials as well at Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. And we'll be having our viewing parties there all season long as well. Your pregame, your postgame, it's at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin.
Secure some price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by Ben Moss. Ben Moss, proudly Canadian-owned, operated with a history dating back more than 100 years. 5 locations in BC. Abbotsford, Victoria, Chilliwack, Willowbrook, and Langley, and Coquitlam Center. Committed to customer satisfaction. Check out the large selection of Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds. They've got mined diamonds available with payment plans to suit your needs. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, because love is timeless. As we welcome in, and we're going to have to start changing his introduction here, Blake.
It's true.
The former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, the most famous man from Oliver, British Columbia, and now also the co-host of a new podcast, 100% Hockey with Darren Millard and our friend John Shannon. Congratulations, my friend. How are you?
That commute to Vegas is going to be a bitch, though. How often are you going?
Somebody has to do it, Blake. Somebody
Right.
has to do it.
Right.
No, it's going to be exciting. We've been working on this for a little while now. We still have a few partners to put to bed, but we will launch on Monday, the 16th of December, which is 6 days from now, and we're excited. And quite frankly, guys, it's going to be a lot of the similar format we had on the last podcast, and we're going to get a lot of really solid NHL guests and media guys within the hockey world to discuss what's going on a 3 times a week basis in the National Hockey League.
Nice.
Very well done. Well, we look forward to that, and we look forward to what you're going to be able to mine on that show, and that we're going to be able to talk about here on Sekeres and Price on your weekly
you know
hits.
what? You guys were always very good to us on the previous show, so we're happy to share and happy to discuss anything that is pertinent to people in the province.
Yeah, well, good to be in the same sandbox with you still, Mr. Shannon. We'll start with Thatcher Demko here. What do you think a realistic expectation for Thatcher Demko's season looks like after missing all of this time?
Well, it's funny that discussion came up yesterday with me with a couple of people, and the answer was, well, he's backed up and now he's going to play, and can he stay healthy? So the expectation isn't as much statistically as it is physically. And we know from his history that Thatcher Demko tends to push himself beyond his own boundaries. And that is going to be something that hopefully he has learned to manage in order to try to stay healthy in the long term for this hockey club. That to me is knowing your limitations. And it certainly sounds like in the discussions that he's had very publicly since first coming out and telling us about the injury, that he seems to understand that more. We all, professional athletes, guys, you've seen this, you've seen it firsthand. They always push themselves beyond the border. And so learning how to do that and when to do that, particularly in the goaltender position in the National Hockey League, is something that comes at a time for Demko that you have to, that this is career concerning now for him in this scenario. So let's just hope, rather than wins and losses, rather than goals against average, rather than save percentage, we're dealing about a player that can stay healthy as opposed to worry about the numbers. Yeah.
Are you confident he can get back to being that Vezina level guy, John?
I am. Yeah, I am. I mean, the Vezina level stuff to me, the award-winning stuff to me is between the ears. Can he be focused? Yes, he can be focused. We've seen that. The question becomes has he learned not to be as acrobatic and as efficient? And so that becomes the big challenge for him at his age, the point in his career where this franchise is relying on him big time.
How would you use him? When he comes back, what would be the organization's appetite to see him in these, let's say, the first month?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure I'd ever play him in back-to-back games, even if there were 3 days between games. This is the reason you can do that is because Kevin Lankinen has done a fantastic job for the hockey clubs. You can ease Demko back into these situations. It's not a case of what you see with Connor Hellebuck in Winnipeg when the decision's made of who's going to play. Connor Hellebuck seems to make the decision. This is one that has to be by committee. I'm sure that Patrick and Jim want to say in it. Rick Tocchet wants to say in it. The goaltending committee wants to say in it. This is not just on Thatcher to say, I'm ready to play. This is one where I think you can ease him into it, Blake, and suggest that, okay, listen, let's, for the first, 3 or 4 weeks and until the new year, let's play a once a week and see what happens. And because, Lankinen has done a good enough job to get them through this stint of time that allows them to do this and has allowed them not to force Demko back early before he's 100%.
And of course, on top of Kevin Lankinen, the other great thing they have going for them, and it's proven out via the stats and the analytics through nearly a third of the season here this year, John, is this is a club that continues to play terrific team defense. All 5 skaters, good assignment, good detail. Yeah. The transformation has been just remarkable because they were anything but that at the end of the Boudreau era. And now that is very much their identity. That is very much their fallback. That is very much, their underpinning of success.
Yeah, and it's funny, I was with Jim Rutherford in Pittsburgh last week, and we ended up talking about a few things, including all the JT Miller noise. But one of the things he talked about was the learning curve for this team this year, thinking that the team was going to feel that it was easy to win this year after what they learned in the playoffs last year. But the one part that they did learn was team defense. There are other aspects that I think that everyone felt that they needed to improve on, but team defense was one of those ones that was accentuated in the success story. Winning at home might be the other one that is the huge discussion point. Certainly there's a lot of positives to be brought out. Lankinen and the team defense are 2 at the top of the list.
Of course, Demko's return not the only one on the minds of Canucks fans, as JT Miller makes an appearance at the game day skate. Won't be playing just yet, but expected to fully practice with the team tomorrow before he maybe jumps into action at the end of the week. Whether that's Thursday or the weekend, we'll find out. But both of those are options now for JT Miller. All of this is fabulous news for management that may get a little bit of a stay of execution, if you will, on having to pull off a trade here to try and salvage their top spot. Not a playoff spot, but if they want to stay sort of in the mix for a division title and for a top 3 spot, I mean, they've got to be careful here that they don't slip too far. But these 2 reinsertions into the lineup certainly help things, don't they?
They do. And eventually the Miller return is something that is not just one from a strategic point of view, but certainly an emotional charge that I think will help as well. So, this was a team that last year didn't face many issues, whether it be guys out of the lineup or injuries. And they have fought through a few of those injuries this year when you think about Demko and Philip Roenick. Going through what he's going through. So you're right. I think that there are so many positives that are going on with the hockey club. Even though you'd look on paper and say, Elias Pettersson can be better. Are we getting, the Dakota Joshua's return? Is he back at a level where you're happy with him? There's lots of stories that are going on, I think, Blake, that you look and say, and I do believe this from an organizational perspective. I think there's a great deal of patience with management, with this group of players. And a lot of the stories that were up there, certainly knocking on doors is one thing, but willing to make a big change at this point, I don't think was ever really on the docket.
Since you were with Rutherford, because last week he certainly made a headline. He was upset at the speculation on Miller's situation, not that we started to hear JT Miller's name in trade rumors. Is that fair? Is that what you heard last week?
The one word that came out of my conversation with Jim was loyalty. He believes in loyalty. He believes that JT Miller has been loyal to the organization, and in return, the organization needs to be loyal to JT Miller. So in fairness to all the noise that was going on, he felt he needed to say something to Patrick and wanted to get that message out there. So from that perspective, it was very much an old school response from the president of the hockey club to say, guys, we're dealing with a person here. We're not dealing with a commodity. Let's just call a spade a shovel and make sure everybody understands that JT Miller is a Vancouver Canuck.
Did he say anything about Boeser and Boeser's extension?
You know what? I did not. It was not supposed to be it was a happenstance meeting. We were both there for the United States Hockey Hall of Fame event in Pittsburgh, which, by the way, was Jimmy's first time back in Pittsburgh since he'd left the organization.
We heard,
which was fascinating. But it was more of a social conversation more than anything about how we're doing.
You didn't interrogate him, Shannon? You had all that time. You didn't interrogate him?
We were having too much. You know what? We were having too much fun. We were actually having too much fun. There are days to be journalists, and there are days to be fun-seeking
cocktail party guests. Yeah, I know which one you choose.
Well, it was 10 in the morning. I'm not sure how many cocktails.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I suppose not. Although we are at the time of year where you can get away with that. Put your journalist hat back on for me. The story from Jonah Siegel down the I-5 here, the YYZ Sports Media blog, that Bell Media might be considering selling TSN, might be looking to sort of run home to mama and what they do at their core and not necessarily media. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, I am told that there is some truth to the story. So Jonah's got great sources. I haven't talked to Jonah since it came out. There is some logic to it when you consider what Bell is going through and how they're trying to streamline certain scenarios. It would be shocking, though, in essence, because Bell has been a very good owner for TSN, and they've done a very good job with sports television in our country. So to me, the shift, the ever-changing shift in the media world in our country, well, in the United States for that matter too, is a fascinating one to watch. I don't have anything to add other than, you know darn well there are a lot of people within the TSN walls that are wondering what the heck is going on, and it's at a time of year when TSN is at its pinnacle when you consider the Grey Cup in Vancouver and the World Junior Hockey Championships coming up in Ottawa. So to me, it's a fascinating story. And then you ask the question, okay, if Bell doesn't do it and Rogers owns the other guy, who
would buy it?
And like, who's even on that list? Who's even eligible here, John?
That is, and you know, because Shaw just sold for $29 billion to Rogers. Yep. Chorus is in huge trouble. Unless there's
tell us and only tell us.
Tell us the only, in the game here.
Well, now, just remember, guys, maybe we got blinders on here because we've gone through a phase of these things where right now the telcos are owning media, but is there another sector of the business community that might enjoy being in the broadcast world if they can make financial sense of it? We went through phases. I mean, hey, listen, I worked for a company that ran Hockey Night in Canada for years and years, and it was basically owned by a brewery. TSN was started by a brewery. We went from breweries to banks to telcos. And now, is there another group out there, another company out there that says, hey, listen, we want to play in that sandbox. That's kind of cool. And make money at it. Make no mistake about it. TSN makes money and makes good money for Bell at this point, which is one of the reasons why I'm always surprised when these kind of stories come up, unless they think they can make so much money out of it, get out of their own debt issues.
So a couple of things there. You're quite right to speculate about other sectors, and you're right. It is so foreign right now, but once upon a time, there were other sectors in the broadcast industry. Number two, it's not empty pipes from TELUS, but they haven't exactly been a big content farm traditionally. And then when you talk about TSN making money, they do minus massive NHL national rights fees, John. But as Jonah notes in his piece, therein lies the rub, right? Like, if you're getting into TSN now, are you getting into it for what would be an awful lot of money, just the price of acquisition, and then a second significant chunk of money if you feel like you have to be back in the NHL national rights game.
And I would have told you prior to Jonah's story that there was an appetite there. They were, they have been, behind the scenes and very informally talking to people about, the future. Now, Rogers has their exclusive window with the NHL starting January 1st for 60 days. But I can tell you that Edward Rogers has already been to New York once. And yesterday at the Board of Governors meeting, Canadian TV rights and the future of Canadian television was high on the agenda. So from that perspective, it is a fascinating time to be thinking of new ownership. But until the new ownership comes, I think TSN and Bell have to have business as usual. And if they have an opportunity to buy at least a portion of the national rights package, they would be wise to. 10 years ago, we laughed at Rogers, what spending all this money. And basically what they did was, because they owned the summertime with the Blue Jays, they also became on a regular basis to own the wintertime, which is something that nobody ever imagined would happen, that TSN would be pushed off its pedestal as number one. And Rogers have done a good job of doing that through those two key sports entities, Major League Baseball and the National Hockey.
Yeah.
What are the chances of a
Didn't
streamer
make the money, though.
What are the chances of a streamer buying them? Maybe not a big streamer, maybe not Amazon, but what about DAZN or Media Pro or somebody like that?
Well, Media Pro's leaving the country, right? Media Pro's getting out of the country. So they're walking away at some point, I think. Amazon's going to have an appetite for a portion of it. They already have an appetite. They're very happy with what's going on in their Monday night packages. Not only are they having pretty good ratings, but the demographic of the ratings is perfect for them. People under the age of 30 are watching on streaming services, which is what advertisers want to buy into. So that's a real positive. So I've always believed that the next Canadian rights deal, which would be, north of $600 million a year, would be split in three: Bell, Rogers, and a streaming service. And, once Amazon did the deal with Rogers, I figured that Amazon would be that streaming service.
Yeah. Part of that Jonas Siegel story was also that Rogers may look at shuttering the Fan 590, or at least as a radio station, and just basically put podcasts up in its place. I mean, my first instinct was, gosh, if the Fan 590 and all its history in Toronto can't make it as a sports talk radio station, what chance does anybody else have? But take on that part of the report as well. What do you know there? What do you see for the future of terrestrial sports talk radio?
Well, I think that, AM radio still has a place. It still has a place. But at the same time, I think Rogers have been ahead of the curve in building podcasts through their AM radio content. They've done a pretty good job. When you think, from the days after McCowan left, using when Eric was there on the noon show, they had a basketball show. Kiprios and his show has been very good as a podcast. So they're basically doing now. The one thing I was always told is that the original radio station and the loyalty of the radio station was Edward Rogers paying tribute to his father, and that he would never abandon AM radio because his father's love of AM radio. And when you look at the cost of it from a corporate perspective, it's a drop in the bucket for Rogers. And in order to try to keep Ted Rogers' legacy alive, would Edward Rogers say, no, we're going to stay on this course and we're going to have radio as long as I'm in charge of Rogers.
Marvelous stuff, John. You made us smarter again this week. And we, once again, a hearty congratulations on the new show, 100% Hockey. Darren Millard, John Shannon, starting on Monday. And we'll catch up with you next Tuesday, buddy. Thanks for this.
Cheers, boys.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
It's Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center, and Cam Robinson is the Director of Content for Elite Prospects. He's had a very big week breaking some huge stories in junior hockey. We're going to get to that in a moment, but we start, as always, with the Vancouver Canucks. First of all, how we doing? Nice to see you. You well?
Doing well, yeah, thanks. Good to see you boys too,
Yeah. Demko, when do you think it would be fair to expect him to be back at the Thatcher Demko level that we all know and love?
This one's tricky, right? This one's tricky for the amount of time he's been off, just the uniqueness of the injury, how, all the reports, it's like he's just got to figure it out. He's going to have to deal with it. And we're not young men anymore. We got to figure things out and deal with injuries all the time here, even just get to the studio. So it's not easy for us. It's not going to be easy for Thatcher either. I think they're going to have to give him a long leash, give him a long runway to get back up to form. I'd love to say it would be around March, maybe early April, just in time for the playoffs. But it could be next season that we see him really elevating back into that, top 3, top 5 goaltender in the world. We hope that he can get back to. But, enough runway. I think he should be clicking at top speed or near that by playoff time anyway.
We were saying yesterday, this is a 50-50 at best sharing of the workload, isn't it, between these two? We don't go to the default position of 2/3 starts to Demko, 1/3 to Lankinen right from the get-go, do we?
No, not right off the hop, I wouldn't imagine. No. I think you're right. I think we'll see a nice split for a little while, but there's a reason that he is your guy too, right? And as things push into February and March, and I think that as long as he's playing well, I think that the lion's share will start to creep his way.
Yeah, we'll see. There's a still long road to hoe here for the Vancouver Canucks, so we'll see what decisions they make. Quinn Hughes departs the game on the weekend. He's gone for a bit, and if ever there needs to be a submission of video for the Hart Trophy, it might just be the position of video
those 13 minutes
where he's not playing.
Those 13 minutes, put it in the Louvre.
That might be the candidacy right there. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. You never cheer for a guy coming back with a bubble so hard. Hey, it's that they are a completely different team without Quinn Hughes. And I mean, by definition, the Hart Trophy is for the MVP, most valuable to his team. And can you really make an argument that any other player is as valuable to the Canucks or to their team as Quinn Hughes is? I mean, Kaprizov is on pace for 60-plus goals and 130-plus points. Nate Mack's going to be in there and Kucherov, and they're going to have these big, gaudy point totals. McDavid's always in the mix. And for some reason, voters seem to lean towards Cale Makar as the top defender and even as a Hart Trophy candidate. I was pulling up some odds there the other day, and I think Hughes is between plus 10,000 and plus 15,000 to win the Hart. Like, he's not even among the top 10 or top 15 players in consideration on bet.
But I think that's probably right. If you're picking odds on a winner, I don't think he's going to win it, but he should.
But he should, right? And he plays on the West Coast, so half the guys voting don't even see him, unless he's out east for a stretch and or at the All-Star game or something like that. They'll see him at the Four Nations and be like, oh, this kid is pretty good, actually. But no, everybody who watches Quinn Hughes on a nightly basis understands that he is the top defenseman in the world and that he is a viable Hart Trophy candidate, whether or not he actually gets to be in that realm at the end of the season.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys 3 variables. And if he checks all 3 boxes, you tell me whether you think he's actually got a chance. Number 1, the Vancouver Canucks make the playoffs and are a good team. Maybe they don't get to Pacific Division winners and 109 points, but something approximating that. Number 2, he leads the defenseman scoring race. He scores more than Cale Makar. And then, fellas, number 3, he gets to 20 goals this year. It was 17 last year. If he does all 3 of those things, do we give him a chance for the Hart?
I don't think the voters are going there. I really don't think I don't think there's much chance for it, period.
But he won a Norris last year. Like, people are more aware of him. Cam,
I personally think if he does all those things, if he gets the 20 goals, and he leads all defensemen, and he leads the Canucks, I think you might be satisfied to see him end up like 5th or 6th in voting, something like that. I think even with everything going on, being a defenseman, being out west, all that stuff, if he ended up like 5th or 6th in Hart Trophy voting,
that'd be a victory.
Yeah.
Right. That you take that as a victory, even though, right, it's hard to do for him, especially just up against all those big name forwards, right? It's really, really difficult. Like, when was the last time we saw Hart? Was it Pronger in like 99 or 2000 or whenever it was? It's
right. When offensive numbers were down, right? So it was. You're right. It's hard to argue against guys with 60 goals, guys with over 125. Anytime you got guys over 125 points, like, that's going to grab attention, right? So.
And Kirill the Thrill is running it up with Minnesota too, right? Like, he is extremely valuable to the Wild too, and he's the leader at this point too.
Yeah, no doubt. It's always going to be a great field. It's always going to be a great field. I think that we understand. But boy, by the strict definition of the award, a judge most valuable to his team. I don't know how you can not look at Quinn Hughes. Let's stay on defense for a second, because we were noting the fine point totals of Kirill Kudryavtsev and EPD, Elias Pettersson, down on the farm. Blake and I were wondering yesterday, is it possible that one of these two guys could be a this year solution for the Vancouver? We know they got holes on defense. We discuss it every week, Cam. Is it possible one of those guys could be a this year solution for the Canucks?
I mean, anything is possible, right? But you can't look at your this roster and be like, we are in our contention window. We're looking to go and push hard, and we're going to feel like a 20-year-old pro rookie here in North America is our solution on the blue line. Not to say Kudryavtsev couldn't come up and make a lot of smart plays, play 15, 16 minutes a night without hurting you, but is not hurting you the same as really moving the needle the way you want to do it. It's every week I say it. They got to do something. And eventually we're going to get to the point where they will do something. And I strongly believe that. But I think that in a perfect world, you leave those two down there. Give them a cup of coffee if you want with injuries, right? Let them develop a bit.
If the end goal for this team was making the playoffs, then I'm more inclined to say yes, because then you just got to get through 82 regular season games. But neither one of those two guys is helping you come playoff time, right?
Yeah. Pettersson could help you bang, like he'd be that physical guy that if you run into some injuries, he comes in, he can handle it physically in the playoffs, but they're not needle movers at this point.
Okay, does the same logic hold for Jonathan Lekramaki then?
No.
He's a lightweight, young player. Could you see him helping them down the stretch and playing in tough March games, playing in tough April games? Is it same or different?
It's different, I would say, because he has such a unique skill set, right? That offense pays the bills, and this kid, he can write checks. And so that shot, it's real, it's NHL level, it's high end. And so, yes, it will be difficult for him when the going gets tough down the stretch and into the playoffs if he was on the big club to find that space. But shooters get hot too, right? And so if you can, obviously we see what he's doing in the American League right now. Like he's scoring goals at a torrid pace. He's shooting the puck. The volume is more impressive to me than even the goals sometimes. Like 4.5 a game, tops in the AHL on a per game basis. He is firing the puck more than anybody down there. He's among U21 players, he's right behind Frankie Nazar as most impactful. So he's right on the cusp. And if you can catch him when he's confident and he's on a heater and you can get him rolling a little bit at the NHL, playing in the top 6, then yes, he could be someone that I think could help this team down the stretch into the playoffs, but with a short leash, right? As soon as the wheels come off that heater, he's not going to be effective. And then you got to reassess.
Brock Boeser. We're approaching tonight. They play game 27, a third of the way through the season. As we know, he hasn't played them all. He'll play his 20th tonight, but it's 16 points in 19 games. It's 7 goals, so it's still tracking as to be a pretty good season for Boeser. When do you suspect the Canucks are going to want to start extension talks with him? And do you think, how much do you think he's helping his cause with the season that he's having?
He's not hurting his cause, like you said, he had the injury there. He's been missing JT, right? They played so many minutes together, nearly all their minutes at 5-on-5 last year together. The shot rate is a little bit down. The goals are a little bit down. He's still clicking, in the high teens, which it just illustrates just how deadly of a finisher he can be. And when he gets around the net, he's really good around those high percentage areas. Still pacing for 30 goals and, close to 70 points. I'm sure he was hoping to click at another 40 goal pace or hit 40, and then the number starts with an 8. I'm sure Vancouver's not mad about that because, maybe they get him locked up at, maybe it's 7x7, maybe it's 7.5 times 6, something like that. But I do think if they haven't already just had those preliminary talks, I'm sure they'll be coming very quickly, because something like this, it doesn't happen overnight. Even though I think that both player and team want this relationship to continue, it's still going to be a bit of a battle, because this is his payday, right? This is the retirement deal in all likelihood.
Yep. And of course, we saw what they did with Pettersson last year too, right? They wanted cost certainty. They wanted to know what Petey was going to cost this year going forward before the deadline. So you sort of wonder whether that is a soft deadline in Boeser extension.
We've talked about Boeser blowing our socks off when he first arrived with his shot and how he's developed. And in a lot of ways, with the better shooters arriving, Miller, Pettersson, putting your finger on exactly what makes Brock Boeser an effective scorer is a little bit more of a difficult task. Do you think that certainly the Canucks could play this angle, but do you think that Brock Boeser realizes that the fit here is pretty good for him? Like, I don't know how plug and play Brock Boeser is on 31 other teams in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, I think that there's a good handful of teams that would be happy to go after him in free agency and slide him onto their first line or first power play unit. But you're right, this is a very good fit, and he has good chemistry with JT. Him and Petey are good buddies, and Quinn, and it's that core is we'll say that they're not all tight, but he seems to be tight with most of them. And so I do think the relationship is there, but you're right? Like when he came into the league, he was looking like he was going to be a pure sniper, someone who could beat you from out high, beat you from anywhere. Even if the goalie's got a clear angle on it, he was still going to go bar down on him. And now it's more about using his intelligence, and he is a really smart hockey player and one of those guys that the puck follows him around, and he can score in a number of ways. And he's added that playmaking to his game. He's added a little bit more jam, never the fleetest of foot, but the speed is fine, and he can handle things defensively. So it's just more of a collection of some of his parts. But he's not a burner. He's on the wing. He is somewhat reliant on playing with good players to put up good points. And so that's just going to kind of tick that number down a little bit. And at the end of the day, if it is, a 7-year deal for sub $50 million, I think that that's okay. I think that that's okay for him too, that shouldn't be the end of the world. And if it was me, if I was in his shoes, that wouldn't be enough for me to kick it down the road and see what free agency had to offer. I'd probably just still sign it up.
Okay, Cam, let's get to the big news that you broke this week. First with Michael Misa, who, as we've talked about in the past, has a chance to go first overall in the 2025 NHL entry draft, a high-scoring forward with Saginaw of the OHL, but then a little closer to home with Gavin McKenna, who everyone anticipates will be the first pick in the 2026 NHL entry draft. We know that the tectonic plates under junior hockey and hockey development are shifting, and the NCAA allowing these CHL players to come now, even after they've dressed for major junior teams. Tell us what you reported this week, and tell us what you think is coming here with these two superstar prospects.
Yeah, and I'll just preface this by saying nothing is done until it is absolutely done, right? And so this is such a unique situation that we have these players, they're playing for their club teams. It's not like they're in the USHL or playing prep school in the States, and it's like, hey, I'm proud to announce my commitment to Boston College or whatever, and everybody knows that, yes, you're 17, you're going to school next year. The plan has been for them to stay with their CHL clubs next season as well, in all likelihood. Even for Michael Misa, it's unlikely that he's going to be playing his draft plus one in the NHL. But with this opening, with that NIL money, that name, image, likeness money that's opened up in college hockey, is that for someone like Gavin McKenna, and I wasn't reporting that he's going to school. I was talking about what limitations are there, what would stop him from going, and what are the opportunities for him. And for him, even as a Canadian working on a student visa, there's ways for him to make up to $1 million playing college hockey next season as a 17, turning 18-year-old. Before he even moves into the NHL. It's an opportunity to have state-of-the-art training facilities, strength and conditioning. Yes, you're playing a less pro-style schedule, but you're in the gym more. You get the college atmosphere, right? You have an experience that not every hockey player gets to, that goes that major junior route, and once you miss it, it's gone. And then you're off to the NHL. So for Misa, I was told from someone who is very connected to something, I guess I wouldn't put something out there unless I had strong reassurances that this is something that is on the way to being done. But is that with Boston University is that they have a framework in place, what that NIL money would look like, how a transition could potentially look like. But again, he's playing for Saginaw. He is a member of the Saginaw Spirit right now, and it's a very difficult situation for everybody to kind of navigate. And so I don't expect these things to get announced until seasons are over. Same with McKenna. It's not like he can go and just head over to Michigan and take a tour of the campus, right? Everybody would be all over him. It'd be major news. And he plays on a good Medicine Hat Tiger squad that, is hoping to push for Memorial Cup. They asked for a bid to host it next year. They didn't get it. I think the CHL might have screwed that up a little bit. If they gave it to Medicine Hat, maybe that would have been enough to keep McKenna there.
Yeah.
Maybe it wouldn't have been. Maybe it wouldn't have been though either, right? Because he's going to put up 125 points this year. Where's the challenge for him next year?
So we're a long way away from the best Canadian junior players playing at the NCAA, but that now seems under threat with this name, image, and likeness.
The fact that it's taken months for this to even tempt these top players shows you that there's going to be an effect, isn't there?
Oh, without question. And it just makes a lot of sense, especially for these guys, whether they're draft eligible like Evan McKenna. And I, in my article there yesterday, I talked about, speaking with Byron Ritchie, his agent, he finished school a year early. And kids don't do that unless they, have maybe some plans or want to keep some doors open for them too, right? But, these guys that are draft eligible that finish their schooling, or the ones that are just high draft picks that aren't quite ready for the NHL, they can't go to the AHL, right? Going to college, getting paid big money, more than they would probably make in their entry-level contract anyways, and getting a new experience, a new challenge. They're playing against guys 22, 23 years old. It's a new opportunity. It's a new measuring stick for them. And then boom, now they can step over and they can play in the NHL and they're draft +2, and they're probably better prepared for it physically and mentally. So, and financially. So it is, there's a lot of boxes checked for players to move that way.
And just so everybody understands how much this NIL money is changing college athletics, there are 130 or so member institutions playing Division I football. The transfer portal opened this week, and some 650 kids were in it within hours, about 5 per team. Now, not all of those kids are just upset about playing time or don't like coach or, want to continue their studies elsewhere. A large majority of them understand if I switch schools, there are boosters, there are donors there that are financing a slush fund that I can take some money out of. And look, football's a different animal. It's the biggest dog on the block when you're talking NCAAs. But of course, that money trickles down to the right guard and the nose tackle. Whereas in hockey, it's going to be pretty concentrated on these top kids like McKenna and like Misa. Boy, this is going to be quite a story to follow, Cam. Great reporting. Thank you for this, and we'll catch up next Tuesday.
Appreciate it, fellas. Talk soon.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
It's Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center, where you extend your game night with a staycation in downtown Vancouver. Book the Harrison Price rate here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Tell them we sent you based on availability. Some blackout dates apply. Well, the big news story in Vancouver yesterday involved a former Whitecaps Academy player, Nathan Demian, 22 years old, of Langley, shot in Columbus, Ohio on Saturday, where he plays soccer for Ohio State University. Apparently a drive-by shooting with 2 cars chasing each other and shooting. He was an innocent bystander. He is in hospital recovering. Certainly wish him the best here.
Hope his family's doing okay with all the news. I mean, just terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. That you could be minding your business off campus, minding your business, and be shot.
Yeah.
Some news from the current Whitecaps. Today was the day where they had to submit their protected list for the San Diego franchise expansion draft. San Diego, Blake.
Yes.
Translates loosely to, Saint Diego.
That's right.
They exposed goalkeeper Yohei Takaoka and protected Diber Caicedo.
Yeah.
You were a little surprised by that.
My only thought is that Caicedo, and people might be saying, how is this possible? And I understand the criticism, but Caicedo has some transfer value. I almost wonder. Now, he made a couple of appearances late in the season. Maybe he won them over that he's found form. Again, he's pretty young. I think he's still only 22, might have just turned 23. At the very least, though, I think they see him as an asset to be protected. And actually, he's 24 now. Because he has transfer value. So if they can get a few $100K, $1 million bucks on a transfer, then they're going to protect him just so they can do that. It may be as simple as that for the Whitecaps. But I mean, I'm a little surprised that guys like Takaoka, like even Bjorn Utvik, who was used a ton last year, end up getting exposed. Those are the kinds of players, if you think about the kinds of players expansion teams want, generally you want to be stout defensively.
Yeah. Might they know something with regards to the availability of keepers around the circuit that they look at it and go, there's just no way they're going to take Takaoka when this guy and this guy are available?
Everybody's lists are available now, and I don't know the ins and outs of every single player out there. William Yarbrough's available, longtime MLS keeper. There are a few out there, but how many guys in their prime? Like Takaoka's in his prime, and he's not a top keeper. He's not a top 8 keeper in the league, but he's a top half keeper, I would say. He's in that next tier of 8, probably. It might be interesting.
There was a time when Vanny was not particularly fussy with Takaoka's work. I think that improved. Did you get any sense on Axel just not thinking that he's the real deal in terms of a number one keeper? What's the line you guys have used? He makes the saves that he's supposed to. He just doesn't make the spectacular save. He doesn't make the game saving.
I would say that's him. Like he's a nice keeper, but I don't think you are full confidence that he's going to save you a game.
Gotcha. Cincinnati Bengals beat Dallas dramatically on Monday Night Football, leaving their NFL playoff hopes alive. We were just looking at this in the AFC. So for Cincinnati to make it, you pretty much have to win out here, your last 4 games. And you need Denver to win, either lose out or win only one. The good news for Cincinnati, they play Denver in a few weeks. Prior to that, they have Tennessee and Cleveland. So a winnable slate that maybe makes that Denver game important. And then Cincinnati finishes up at Pittsburgh. Big one this weekend with Indianapolis and Denver, because Indianapolis, of course, is also in the playoff hunt for the final playoff spot in the AFC alongside the Broncos. And I suppose that loss by the Chargers to Kansas City, and yet another squeaky hair on your chinny chin win for Kansas City. But the Chargers are also 8-5. They own a tiebreaker over Denver right now, so you'll see them above in the standings. Miami is in the mix here as well. They have Texas, San Francisco, the Browns, and the Jets left. So if Miami can get a win in Houston this week, then maybe you got a chance to run the table. Anyways,
I find it hard to watch Miami because I'm so worried about Tua, but they are a fun team. Like
when they got Tyreek and Waddle going, with Tua, that is a awfully fun offense. I'm not sure it's a complete team, and of course, the one thing in Mike McDaniel's tenure there, they're kind of like Takaoka. They win the ones they're supposed to win.
Right.
They don't ever really rise up and beat a better team. Summer McIntosh.
Before we leave football, we should just mention this little bit of BC Lions news here. Sione Tuema suspended for 2 games for next season, violating the drug policy, banned substance amphetamine found as he tests positive. So we'll see. I'm sure that gets appealed. That's generally how this goes, just politically. You appeal, maybe cut that in half. But, a bit of a tough start for next season.
Is he under contract for next year?
That's a good question. I mean,
yes, he is. Yeah. So he would have been and still is one of the edge guys under contract.
Now it's under the club's discretion to allow players so can he participate in training camp? Yes, he can. And I would assume you do because you want him ready for game 3. But that's club's discretion. And given the transgression, I would guess they have him in camp and even preseason games. He's allowed to participate in preseason games.
Okay. Summer McIntosh, what a year for her, the teenager. Officially today, the Northern Star Award winner. That's formerly the Lou Marsh Trophy for the top Canadian athlete. We did an item on this last week. Just a runaway winner. There was no one who was going to touch Summer after her incredible Olympics, but it also happens on a day where she obliterates the world record in the 400-meter freestyle.
Also got the bronze in the relay, too, with Penny. Yeah. Penny Alexiak was great today, which is a good sign, too, by the way.
This is a true phenom of Canadian sport here, and she is going to be awfully fun to watch because, and I know swimmers peak a little bit earlier, but she's still just 18, Blake. She is 18 winning the Canadian Athlete of the Year. Let that one sink in for a second.
Well, the other
18 years old, you're named the best athlete in your country.
The other thing I'm thinking about in terms of today's accomplishment, getting the world record, is these athletes are so tuned, people. They are tuned almost to the week, certainly to the month, about making sure they peak for the big moments, peaking for the Olympics. The fact that 4 months after the Olympics are done, she's setting world records.
No, I know.
That means just overall, she just keeps on going.
Jerry DiPoto, Seattle Mariners president, spoke at the baseball winter meetings yesterday to Major League Baseball Network. He says, quote, they've been resistant to even engaging in discussion on their young starters, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, Bryce Miller, and Brian Wu. In fact, they're pursuing the Japanese fireballer Roki Sasaki. And if they were to land him, maybe that changes with one of the young starters. There's also been some conjecture about Luis Castillo, their fine would-be ace. They brought him in to be an ace. I'm not sure he was the ace after last year. But the problem there, because many people look at it and go, oh, well, he's actually on a big ticket, and given that they're budget conscious, it would make most sense to trade him. He's 31 years old. Alas, in fact, he'll be 32 later this week. Alas, he's got a no-trade clause for this year. So if he doesn't want to go anywhere, Castillo is not going anywhere. Instead, DiPoto says they have been, quote, very aggressive in talking with other teams about trades that include upper-end Mariners prospects. And we have talked about how Seattle has a loaded prospect system right now. DiPoto mentioning Ty Locklear and Cole Young as guys who are ready to contribute in 2025. Locklear had a couple of opportunities last year, did not do well, but he could be a factor at first base. And Young, we've talked about, could be a factor at second base alongside Dylan Moore and the speedster Ryan Bliss. The payroll is going to come in about 155 million. They are actually spending less than what they did a number of years ago, but of course they're one of the teams whose broadcast revenues have been affected.
Yes. Yeah. A lot coming in.
So they're trotting that out as a reason. Many down the I-5 just view it as an excuse. Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results for Monday. Who put on the best show in Vancouver this weekend? Your options were Quinn Hughes, Nikita Kucherov, Taylor Swift, and the winner is?
Swift.
Correct. Percentage?
47.
On the number, Blake.
Nice.
Quinn Hughes, 43. Kucherov, 10%. Dealbug, to make it a fair competition, you'd have to have a concert with Taylor and Kanye on the same stage, battling over the mic and trading insults. Very amusing. Yes, I would watch that too. Errors and omissions, just one, and really more an omission than an error. We mentioned Cirelli and Point from the Tampa Bay Lightning off to play for Canada at the Four Nations face-off. Brandon Hagel made the team too.
Yep.
They have a trio of forwards playing for Canada at the Four Nations.
And not exactly a household name.
No, but
speedy,
Hagel's
aggressive.
really picked it, like boy, if you're the Blackhawks, how much do you regret moving Brandon Hagel? He's still just 26 years old.
Yeah.
You moved him in the midst of a 21-goal campaign. He wound up scoring 25 that year, did 30 the next, 26 the year thereafter. He was up to 75 points last year.
It made no sense when they did it, though. Everybody was like, why?
Yeah, well, again, they got, picks and all that. They probably looked at Hagel and went, this is a 6th-round draft pick. Sure, he scored a lot in Red Deer, but he had a decent AHL season. They probably just didn't see him as a guy who was going to turn into a frontline NHL scorer.
They either didn't believe he would be able to do it every year, or they believed that he would get better, but that it would be outside their window. So why bother having him?
Yeah, I was thinking about this yesterday or a couple days ago when we got the news on Luke Richardson. Okay, it's easy to let the coach go. Well, fair enough. That was an awfully young, awfully inexperienced general manager who they elevated in Kyle Davidson after the business with Joel Quenneville and Stan Bowman and having to clean house because those guys turned a blind eye to sexual assault within their organization. If Connor Bedard is as disappointed as he is in what's going on there in Chicago, maybe it's time to go out and get a proven guy there, huh? Maybe like Doug Wilson's a former Chicago Blackhawk, right? Did a fine job in San Jose. I'm just throwing a name out there, but maybe it's time to go out and get a more proven general manager if you're Chicago, if that's the next shoe to drop for a franchise that continues to flounder.
Head coach too, man. Like they need somebody behind the bench too that restores some sanity behind the bench too.
All right. Barring anything further on errors and omissions, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you connecting with us, spending some time. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky. We are live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays, and please support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.